think you're at a conference like this and such beautiful surroundings, it's easy to forget there's bad things out there. So I'm here to remind you. And especially my goal is to help overcome end-user indifference to cybercrime. This is my agenda today. I wanted to talk about what's new in cybercrime, and I'm talking about the mega trends, the things that have happened in the last couple of years that make things really, really difficult for us to combat it. Then we'll go into what's going on in the US and critical infrastructure, what worries the government the most, and the number one reason people don't care. We started in 97 to 2005, very slow, steady growth in malware. And at that time, it was mostly viruses that we were talking about. Then all of a sudden, we saw a big uptick in 2006. We saw as much malware then as we had ever seen before. The next year, it went to 10 times that amount, and then it hasn't stopped since. So now we're talking about 120,000 new threats a year. And the biggest problem with this is end users, what they know is still way back in 2006. The thing that's driving it is the money, and the money is incredible. The gang that got away with the Target breach, we still don't know who it is, nobody's caught them, $50 million they walked away with. Ransomware, like CryptoLocker, which was the first one to hit the US at the end of 2013, and that's the stuff that locks up, encrypts all your files, locks everything up, and then blows it up if you don't pay the ransom. The first one that we saw that was targeted at English-speaking countries made $28 million in the first couple of months. And then Kaspersky Lab, we actually talked about we announced our discovery of the Carbon Act Trojan, which was banking malware, just about 2 months ago. And that malware was responsible for siphoning $1 billion out of 100 banks in 30 countries. There used to be a barrier to entry. You used to have to actually be a hacker to get in, but you don't have to do that anymore. You can have an arm's length relationship. So you can understand how every criminal in the world is either involved in cybercrime or they want to be involved in cybercrime. You can rent malware. You can buy malware for $2,000 today that would have cost $60,000 for you to develop a few years ago. You can hire someone to run a campaign for you. You can even, you rent the botnet that distributes all the spam that causes all the infections. Once you have a successful campaign and you've netted assets, you can have someone post those for you. You can actually consign someone to sell it for you on the underground equivalent of eBay. Then you can get paid through Bitcoin. End users who aren't educated in cybersecurity, they think about malware like the old days of viruses. And remember 15 years ago, when somebody wrote a virus, the whole point was to infect as many systems as possible, sometimes to do destruction, to get their name on the front page. That was the point of a virus. There was no connection between the cyber criminal who wrote the virus and the virus. But now, because it's all money driven, the only value to a cyber criminal, the only way they can make money is to establish a connection. This is actually very useful information to lead with some customers. Any customer who really cares about their privacy, and you know the ones I'm talking about because they're usually rabid about privacy, and then some people say, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me. Those are the ones where you can say privacy is only as strong as your security, because this is how all malware operates now. So the malware gets on the system, it checks to see if the system's part of an interesting network. If it's not, then it checks to see if there's online banking or password credentials. And if there's nothing like that, it just makes it part of a botnet. And you can see that the Mariposa botnet was 13 million. 1 in 5 computers in the world is infected with a Trojan. Because, of course, Trojans are really hard to get rid of. A lot of them fake out the antivirus. It makes it look like the antivirus is still running and so forth. And, of course, he's right to say it only takes one wrong click. And, in fact, now we've been seeing more and more malvertising, which doesn't even take a click. So you just go to a website that you frequent anyway, but the advertisements are flowing in, and the business model is not set up to check to make sure that there's nothing wrong with advertising. One of the other things that Kaspersky announced in the last 4 months was a dark hotel. They hijacked the hotel network so that everyone who connected to the network, it said, oh, you have to upgrade your software before you can connect. They had a 100% success rate. 100%. And of course, they're targeted executives who are traveling. So I hope nobody here will ever, if you're connecting to a public network, you're at the airport or you're at Starbucks or you're at your hotel and it asks you to upgrade software, don't ever do it. Cybercriminals have learned to map out the supply chain. And I just had to throw in a malicious insider because it's not that hard in a chain this big to get someone to walk in with malware to one of these points. So you could be, as a reseller, for example, providing products to landscaping, and that landscaping company could be doing their work for a secure facility, and if they have a login to the system or something like that, then you automatically become a target. And then the thing that's most common is they will decide which companies they want to go into, and then there's very cool and easy and freely downloadable software that will develop a profile of people, go through all their LinkedIn, their social media, figure out what they're most likely to respond to in phishing emails. And so they'll put together a dossier on the companies so that they can send you a phishing email. They know where you went to school. They know your favorite charities. They get all that information so they can send you something that you'll actually respond to because it looks legitimate. Let's do the math on the vulnerabilities in the home users, the potential vulnerabilities. 87.7 of them are connected to the internet. They have 3.5 devices each. That's 1 billion entry points for malware. 1 billion entry points. And it's not just one pipe, right? They're coming from all these different sources. It's the internet. They're all connected to everything, and there's 1 billion different entry points. And then what do these end users do? They go back and forth from work every day. So they're going from one attack area to another attack area, carrying tools and stuff. And so over 1 billion entry points for malware, does it make sense? Is it clearer now why the government can't? They're so short on resources to fight this problem. And there's nothing they can do if end users don't start doing a better job. We've got the Internet of Things looming in the distance, which has no security built into it when everyone starts plugging their toasters into the internet. The #1 infection vector by far is phishing and email. So we know that this is all about the end user, affecting the end user, moving the end user. Let's look at the top reasons why end users don't care. The government will save us is their #1 hope. Why should I bother is the next one. They have no motivation. Where would I even start? And that's the one person that's overwhelmed. There's just so much information out there on cybersecurity. And then finally, I have a life. I don't have bandwidth for any of this. So let's look at the why should I bother when people have no motivation. This model has stood the test of time, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You'll know this if you took Psych 101. The idea is that we work our way as human beings from basic stuff, from food, shelter, clothing. After we've got that handled, then we move up to the next layer. And what is that? It's safety. It's safety and security. So it is actually very fundamental. And the question really is, what does that customer care about keeping safe? Is it their bank account? Is it their kids? Is it more about home? Is it more about business? If we can help connect safety with cybersecurity, then we can really motivate people. It's kind of like 9/11. We are in our first world bubble, and 9/11 happens, and then most of us were walking around saying, could it be my city that's lit up next? We just didn't know. It was such a shock, and it kind of knocked us back down to that safety part of the paradigm. And it's not that we want people to live there, we want to scare people to death, but something in between a healthy respect for what's actually going on out there and total disinterest would be a good goal. I know that there's bad stuff going on out there, but I don't know what to do today to help myself. And so somehow we have to help that. We have to find a way to simplify the information and make it easy enough for them to understand. So that's what this is about, is trying to figure out things that they can connect to. The new research says we have about 6 seconds to get someone's attention in an email or internet website. So that's what we really need to think of. There are some users that all they're ever going to be interested in is that little flashy bit of information. They'll say, I don't really want to know anything about it. But if you give them a little tidbit here, a little tidbit there, maybe it's the privacy thing, then you can lead them on to where they need to be, which is at least purchasing the security that they need to stay safe. It is protecting you against something that you can't see, and it's keeping something from happening. So in terms of reinforcing ROI, you need to remind them what else is happening out there. Most of them don't even know. They don't know enough about cybersecurity to even say that they want to be educated. They don't think there's a problem, or they think the government will save them. Also, they need your help. They can't do it by themselves. If you just go out there and start Googling a little bit about cybersecurity or threats to banks or threats to small business, you'll see that it's overwhelming what they run into, and they need it to be really simple. You definitely want to stay focused on their priorities. What are they mostly concerned about? Beware of the attention span, right? We know that it goes like this, and we need to respect it, and it's true for all of us. We want to always start with the teaser, the flashy little bit of information, the exciting fact, reinforce the return on their investment. And that should be, annually for someone who doesn't have a lot of bandwidth. For somebody who's really interested, like that CEO who says, I know cybersecurity is important, come in and talk to me for, we'll talk about it for 45 minutes, then send him something every quarter about what's going on with other businesses. And definitely make use of all the one-pagers, and we're trying to create material that's going to grab people in that first 6 seconds and get them to keep reading. Key messages to customers: privacy on computing devices is only as good as your security. The government won't save you because they can't. They absolutely don't have the resources to manage 1 billion entry points for malware. Your safety is under threat: financial assets, identity information, bankruptcy, disasters. And then finally, you can go with the patriotic angle. You can say, do you care about the country? Do you know about the order? Do you know what's happening with critical infrastructure? Try to find a way to make malware more visible to end users. All right, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.